You ever have a moment where your whole life gets stripped away right there in front of an audience? That was the kind of day. I had the kind you only see in movies, except it was my boots hitting the hangar floor, my insignia under Colonel Harrison's heel, his voice echoing off the steel. You want to play soldier? Maybe we should get her a pink beret. 200 eyes watching as he tried to make me disappear. But I just unpinned my wings, set them next to my shredded uniform, and turned, calm as still water. There was a tattoo just visible under my collar, a dagger wrapped in wings. That little mark changed everything, but most folks didn't know it yet. Now, let me back up a sec. My name's Sarah Mitchell, and until all that, nobody much remembered me, which suited me fine. 35, blonde ponytail, always jogging at sunrise on the edge of Phoenix where the desert tried to reclaim the city every year. I taught algebra at Desert Valley High, Unit 312, in Saguaro Heights, the neighbor you see but never notice. My place was a shrine to minimalism: bare walls, battered textbooks, one faded photo of a jet at sunset that nobody ever bothered to ask about. Most days, my phone was silent, and the only folks who ever called were school secretaries or robo-marketers. When other teachers asked me to join them for drinks, I'd beg off-grading, lesson plans, you name it. I got labeled reliable, no drama, and more than once the principal called me a ghost. He had no idea how close to the truth he was, and I wasn't about to fill him in. Truth is, I'd spent a decade erasing my past until one day a recruitment poster caught my eye. Civilian to military pilot program at Edwards Air Force Base. My hand shook filling out the application, even though all I put down was the 500 hours I'd logged in a Cessna. That's the part they wanted to see, not the 9,400 hours I'd spent flying everything from F-22s to machines the government pretends don't exist. They almost tossed my application, thought I was another Top Gun wannabe. But I aced the tests, and somehow they called me in. Day one, I parked my battered Honda between a Porsche and a Tesla, took my single bag, and slipped in without a ripple. The other candidates? Corporate pilots, trust fund adventurers. Brad Thompson, son of Senator Thompson. A smirk for every occasion looked right through me. Lost, ma'am. Cafeteria is the other building. I just smiled and sat in the back, jotting equations no one else understood. Now, 10 years earlier, I've been a legend, youngest ever on the F-22 call sign Ghost. Not invisible, just never where you expected. Flew rings around my commanders at Nellis, graduated MIT at 21, languages, tech, the works. But in the military, talent's just blood in the water. Major Derek Coleman later to become Colonel Harrison resented me from the start. Every time I outflew him, he'd ratchet up the subtle, sabotage-skewed reports, missing meetings, maintenance issues before key evaluations. But none of that mattered when I was picked for Operation Steel, Eaglia mission deep into Syrian airspace. Coleman handled the planning. The coordinates he gave me sent me straight into an ambush. 3 MiGs, a forest of SAMs, and 90 seconds of chaos that'll never be declassified. I shot down all 3, took out 2 SAM sites, but the Targeta chemical weapons facility was untouched. I lived. That was my real crime. Coleman doctored the files, testified I'd gone rogue. The brass took his word. Only my brother James, a special ops pilot, saw the truth. When Coleman ran another high-risk op, James volunteered, saying I was too compromised. Coleman didn't even realize the switch until it was too late. James's Black Hawk was shot down mechanical failure, they said. I didn't buy it. I watched them fold a flag over his coffin and swore 2 things. I'd vanish, and I'd never forget. I turned to my wings, signed papers that erased me from every system, declined jobs from the CIA, defense contractors, and even a personal call from General Roberts. I became a teacher, just another face in a crowd. No drama, no risk. For 10 years, I built a life so bland it almost fooled me. Then I saw the Edwards posting and the signature at the bottom, Colonel Harrison. That was Coleman, hiding in plain sight. I signed up that night. Knew exactly what I was walking into. The game started immediately: exclusion, mocking, deliberate sabotage. Thompson held court, the instructors piled on, and my few allies Jennifer, Maria, Lisa were warned off. Locker emptied, simulator rigged, notes missing. I kept my head down, but they pushed harder. Until week 12, when I was assigned to lead the weakest pilots through a formation exercise. That's when I stopped hiding. The old instincts returned. I talked them through it, kept the tactics simple, but made us a team. We flew as one impossible for beginners. The instructors replayed the tape over and over. Thompson and his boys couldn't touch us. By the time the simulated combat exercise rolled around, I'd studied every rival's habit, every weakness. We swept the board. 4 kills in 8 seconds. The room was silent except for the sound of egos breaking. But Harrison Coleman couldn't stand it. He called a public tribunal, accused me of cheating, not being a team player, all the usual. You can leave now, or I'll have security escort you out. So I did, quietly, carefully, and with more dignity than he'd ever have. That night, I opened the box I'd kept hidden for a Decademy old rank, medals, and a letter from James. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, especially when you're terrified. There was a sealed note from Roberts. When you're ready to stop him, call this number. I called. The next morning, the sky over Edwards roared. I borrowed a Dassault Rafale for an Allied demonstration. Roberts made it legal. Pulled maneuvers no one had seen outside black budget projects. When I called in, Go Zero, request tactical demo, the tower cleared the airspace, and the entire hangar spilled outside to watch. Harrison was livid, but the command structure had shifted. Roberts arrived with federal agents arrested Harrison Coleman. On the spot, laid out the decades of sabotage, and explained that I'd been documenting every abuse for months. The silence in the hangar was broken only by applause from the students I'd led. That's what real leadership is, you know? Not dominance, but lifting others up until they can fly beside you. A week later, back in Phoenix, I ran into Jennifer Adams on my morning route. She apologized, said she should have stood up sooner. I told her what I wish someone had told. Time survival comes before solidarity, but it's never too late to do the right thing. 6 months on, the military was still reeling. Harrison's crimes exposed a whole network. 15 officers gone. Real reforms underway. Thompson started mentoring underprivileged kids. The novices I'd led graduated with honors. Even my algebra classes swelled. Kids wanted to know what it was like to solve real problems, not just equations. Roberts visited, offered me a medal, a consultant gig at the academy. I declined the medal, James, and I knew what mattered. No publicity required. But I agreed to help design a program that taught not just flying, but ethics. 2 weeks a year, that's all. The rest of the time, I belonged to my students, teaching them that every problem has a solution, that fear can be overcome, that you can choose what you become. 1 year after that flight, I stood at a memorial for aviators lost not to war, but to failed leadership. James's name was there. Jennifer, now an instructor, thanked me for changing the way she taught. A nervous young lieutenant recognized me. "Are you Ghost?" she asked. "I used to be," I said. "Now I just help people find their own wings." She told me that seeing my story stopped her from quitting. She realized belonging isn't about fitting and it's about flying true. As the sun set over the Mojave, I watched jets trace patterns overhead and thought of all I'd lost and all I'd learned. Some victories aren't about defeating others, but about lifting them higher. Sometimes the greatest strength is in forgiveness, in building rather than destroying. Would you have chosen revenge or forgiveness? Maybe that's the real question. In the end, it's not about who flies the highest, but who helps others find their place in the sky. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you believe? Is real justice found in revenge or in giving others the chance to rise above what try to keep them down? Let's talk about it.